Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to the Next Level, Conversations that Propel Business. This is Bob Gibbons.
And I'm Stephen Nooner. My friend Ryan Cassin is here with us. He is the CEO of Beast Digital, a full-service digital strategy and a new media communications firm in Bob's favorite subject, politics.
I was waiting to see what was coming.
That was a cliffhanger.
Beast Digital provides most dramatic introduction ever. Beast Digital provides creative, integrated, and engaging digital campaigns that create winning election results. They're in 2 locations. Could you guess where they would be?
Let's see, Moscow and Washington,
That's our expansion location.
That's why he wins so much.
Yep.
Dallas and Washington, D.C. They have 12 employees. If you want to learn more, please visit beastdigital.com. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks so much. Great to be here.
Glad you're here. Well, we always like to start off with digital, with
that too,
with wisdom of others, digital wisdom of others. Today we're going to George Patton. For those of you who don't know George Patton, big-time World War II general. He said, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week."
Isn't that how you proposed to Jan?
Violently?
Hey, it all worked out, right?
That's how she proposed to me. The ultimatum. So why do you like that quote?
Yeah.
I love it because it speaks to one of the biggest challenges in our industry, politics, that analysis paralysis, where you have a lot of smart people in a room getting together, coming up with outstanding ideas, and there just becomes sort of this tension between, all right, well, do we go in, do we pursue option A? Is it B? Is it C? Is it D? And by the time that you've made a decision, you've missed all of the opportunity to capitalize on a particular situation, or maybe you've missed your opportunity to respond to an attack or a particularly challenging situation. And so, I look at this and I think, we've got a lot of smart people. We got great teams that we work with. Let's decide on a plan, stick to it, and then go and execute it. And I think that also applies to us in our business as well. I mean, when we were just a 2-person operation, it was great to always have our leadership retreat. Me and John on our team, and we'd get together and we would talk about, all right, well, what are our big plans? And as a 2-person firm that had just started up, the sky was the limit. And that was actually one of the biggest challenges, is that we had the ability to say, oh, we could go in any number of these different directions, and they all seemed equally good. And if we pursued them all, we would make no progress at all. And so, we've really incorporated that internally as well. And we say, I think the ground level version of that is that the B paper turned in on time is better than the A paper turned in a day late.
Absolutely. I love that.
So you talked a little about your business, and I want to talk more because it's super interesting what you do, but I was blown away by what your actual first business was. Can you share that? That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, so anybody who knows me will not be shocked to learn that, or will not be shocked to hear me say that I'm a big nerd. And so grew up doing software development. I managed to have a friend who had taught himself how to program computers back in the DOS days, way back when. And I learned from him as well, and we would make games together, and we would produce these games for our neighborhood. And it was the first time I realized I was onto something is when one of the neighborhood kids, all of 7 or 8 years old, managed to raid her mother's purse, steal $20 out of it, which was this huge money back then, and come and pay me for a 3.5-inch floppy disk of this game, which was effectively just a stick figure and a spelling quiz, moving scurrying around the screen. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I realized as soon as that transaction happened that there's something to that, and I think an entrepreneurial spark maybe was sort of set off in.
So did you know it was stolen money when you took it?
I didn't apparently. So the way that I learned about this is that there was apparently a conference of the parents that happened shortly thereafter, and they were trying to figure out what I was doing to convince the other neighborhood kids to go steal money and give it to me.
So how was reform school?
Troubled youth, clearly.
But so seriously though, how do you get from software programming? I know you've got a lot of background in that. How do you get from that to politics and the company that you run now?
Yeah, so I mean, I thought that for the longest time I was going to be a software engineer. I got my first job when I was 14. I worked for Netscape. It was owned by AOL Time Warner at the time.
What were you doing at 14, Bob?
I think I was a janitor or a busboy.
Well, we lived on an 80-acre farm, so there were chickens, there were sheep, there were horses, and then I had my 28.8 kilobit connection to the internet, so over the phone line. So that was my window out, and it was an incredible experience. And I realized that just by investing myself 110% in that at a very young age, it was incredibly fulfilling. But it was also I could already begin to feel a sense of burnout from the people around me who were doing it full time, and literally in some cases, they're fighting the good fight and sleeping under their desks, commuting, from Michigan to California every 2 weeks, where the company was headquartered. There were some people out in Michigan who worked with me. And the reality is that the computers never sleep, and so that was something that just permeated that industry, especially when we were under attack. Microsoft was coming in and making Internet Explorer free. Long story short, I was sort of becoming disillusioned with that and got bit by the political bug in college. And I think that this is a very common story in our industry where somebody, some friend, some well-intended friend comes and says, "Hey, why don't you come volunteer on this campaign with me and check it out?" And before you know it, you immediately get sucked into this world that is very fast-paced, very exciting. Everything that you and your candidate is doing, has the potential to make news. And there's this competitive environment. And I was never going to play, for the NFL. I'm never going to be on an NBA team. But, I could sort of fulfill that desire to have a very clear binary win or loss, that competitive spirit. There's an election day. I know that on one day at one moment will either be the vindication of all of our efforts or rebuke of them. And so it just bit me. And ever since then, I've been sort of a political nerd. Been on campaigns.
What kind of campaign was that you started on?
Yeah, it was a congressional campaign in the 7th Congressional District of Michigan. It was the same district that my college was in. There were 7 counties and 7 candidates, each from their own home county. And so it was really, everybody was battling in their own home turf. And then, converging on the county my candidate was from, and saying, "Hey, if I win my home county plus this other county, then I can win this primary election." And unfortunately, it meant that we had very few people left to vote for us by the end of the campaign, and it was a big loss. I mean, we lost pretty badly, and I very quickly learned that you learn more on a losing campaign than you do on a winning campaign. Even when you do a sort of a retrospective on a winning campaign, you say, everything looks like it was the right decision, more or less in retrospect. But when you have a losing campaign, you get to analyze and look at every single decision, every dollar that was raised and how it was spent, everywhere that you went with the candidate's time, every aspect of your message, and say, all right, well, where did we fall short, and how can we make sure that doesn't happen again?
Or you can just blame Russia.
Yeah. That Russia didn't play such a big role in 2004 elections yet, but
I'm messing around.
So, what is the way that you take that volunteering on a campaign into a business?
So that was just it. Like, my end to be sort of more than a volunteer was to be able to wear that nerd hat. So I took 2 very different industries and was able to find the intersection of them. And in 2004, having a website was impressive. Being able to send an email to your supporters, that was off the charts impressive. This is pre, 2008 Obama campaign where he sort of redefined how digital can play a role in a modern campaign. And so I was able to be that guy who was able to build the website and who's able to send out those emails and who's able to do all those technical things and work the internet magic as far as anybody else on the campaign was concerned. And so that was it became very clear that this was these were two industries that were going to continue to converge. That technology and digital outreach and that marketing online, those are going to be things that played greater and greater roles in campaigns. And as sort of I built my campaign experience, I was always getting pulled away along the way by either other campaigns or, working on the campaign I was directly on to build technology solutions for them or to try to do things in new ways. How do you bring mobile apps to door walking? Well, in 2010, that was a really new question compared to it's commonplace in 2016, 2018 campaigns now. And so it just became clear after the 2010 race that I did that there's an opportunity here for me to build a business. I'd always had that entrepreneurial spark. I was excited to look for that right moment. And if I didn't do it right then and there, I was afraid that I was never going to do it.
So getting clients, though, I mean, was it a function of you already had credibility? Or because you would think political would be pretty entrenched with people already within, that seems like a hard sector to crack.
Yeah, well, it would be if I was trying to do sort of one of the traditional practice areas like mail or polling or TV. Those would have been harder industries for me to break into. But because I had already been doing sort of the digital as it was rising, and there were so few people who could satisfy that on our side of the aisle. I think in politics in particular, there's this tremendous tradition of people going out and sort of hanging their own shingle, right? And politics is an industry where if you have the trust of the people that you're working with, it's a very, trust is the currency. They will give you a shot. They will give you an opportunity to succeed, to try something new, to prove yourself. And that was a very warm reception into the political world and business. It's an industry that makes it very easy to get into and to be able to get that critical first client, because going from 0 to 1 is usually the big hurdle in professional services consulting. How do you get that first client when you haven't done what you say you're going to do before?
So, but then you get the business going, and now you have literally a business, which from what I understand, just knowing you, that's unique within that space. Most people are consultants. How did you make that mental jump, and what did you do to get there?
Well, I think that was the entrepreneurial side. I don't personally. I don't want to. I'm not seeking to influence our candidates or see my name out there. I'm happy to be behind the scenes and do great work for our candidates, and obviously we want them to take our advice. But I don't. My vision, my goal is not to be the person who's in the candidate's ear, right, all the time, sort of crafting the secret sauce, right? So we're doing work for our candidates and making sure that, the business survives beyond just me. I think that's one of the big differences between political businesses, that it's people hanging a shingle out versus businesses that survive beyond just the one principle. And that's what we're trying to build is how can we create a team, the processes, the organization to really continue to grow, even if I wasn't, a part of the business one day.
Is it required that you pick a side?
Yeah, I think so. You get married into a family. And, in politics, there's so few. In the grand scheme of things, there are so few people who ultimately make the decisions. It's a set of consultants, a set of other vendors and business owners, and so you sort of build relationships within that family. And campaigns, even though you have the same objective, they're waged in completely different ways on the Republican and Democratic sides of the aisle.
We're going to go to a break. When we return, what is the best advice Ryan has ever received and implemented? The answer will make you an entrepreneur if you aren't, and a better one if you are. Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand, and landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them, so let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at TexasTenantRep.com. Again, that's TexasTenantRep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Hi, this is Stephen Nooner.
And Bob Gibbons. And speaking of gratitude, on next week's show, I'm really excited about Jack Davis. He records this every week, and he tries to turn you into a real radio show host.
He scares me into submission, and it still doesn't work.
Keep trying, Jack. Welcome back to The Next Level. We're here with Ryan Cassin. He's the founder and CEO of Beast Digital, and you can find him online at beastdigital.com.
Love that name, Beast Digital.
We'll feed the beast every day, day in and day out.
I love on what the winners.
The winners are made. That's our business.
Well, speaking of winners, you talked about winning advice that you got, and I used that kind of a little bit as a hook, but it was impactful for me, and I think it's worth sharing. So it's your best advice you've ever received that you've actually implemented.
Yeah. So the best advice I received, and I'm ashamed to say I can't remember who shared this with me because it's really
Bob Gibbons.
Yeah, I think it was Bob. now that you mention it, because it made such a big and it continues to make a big difference. I think advice. The best advice gives you a mental model for how you look at the world. Right, It's something that can extend and travel with you. And as you face new decisions or new challenges, can you apply these mental models? And the one that has really helped me is thinking about, all right, in any big decision, and there are many big decisions for every small business or entrepreneurial enterprise to make. Think about the worst thing that could possibly happen, because usually that's the thing that holds people back. It's that fear of, oh my gosh, the worst possible thing. Here's what would happen. And I always force myself to go through the exercise of saying, okay, well, let's say that did happen. The worst imaginable thing. It's very rare we're dealing in life and death issues here. So what would I do then? What would I do to respond to that? Okay, and if I responded to it in that way, what would I do next? And how would I go from there to the next step, to the next step, to the next step? And you very quickly realize that, okay, even if it gets to the worst possible destination or outcome as a result of a decision you've made, you've got a path out. It's very rare that you're just totally lost and on the ocean without a paddle. But even then, you sort of look back and you say, well, that's not actually that bad, all things considered. That's something I could bounce back from. That's something I could recover from. And so that's really helped me. I would also say one other small piece of advice I've gotten from one of the consultants who was on the first race I did was that there are many paths to the top of the mountain. And so you might be going up a path to the top, what you think is the top of the mountain, and you realize that it's a dead end. You might have to double back and go down the mountain a little bit and find another path and continue to go up. But I've really, with every setback, I've kept that in mind, that there are many paths to the top of the mountaintop, and even if I have to retreat a little bit, I can find another path on the way to the top.
So there's a million campaigns every
lots
4 years and 2 years and et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
So how do you pick the ones that you're going to want to be involved with?
Yeah, so we want to work with candidates who are well organized, who have a reason for running. It's a shockingly challenging question for some first-time candidates in particular to answer. Why are you running? It can also be a tricky question for long-term incumbents. Well, why are you running for your 10th term? So we want to work with candidates who have a really clear sense of why they're doing it, what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, and have a pathway to victory. And for every candidate, that looks a little bit different. Obviously, that's something we help craft for them as well. But we work with candidates who have just really strong senses of themselves and have a vision for where they want to take the country. We think that's extraordinarily important, especially where, in social media in particular, the world that we travel in, authenticity reigns supreme, and people can sort of smell out real quickly, your old, tired, talking point politician, right? So there's a new standard, there's a new expectation, even for long-time incumbents, to do things differently, to communicate differently, and we want to be be a catalyst for that change. That's what we come in to help do for them, but they have to be open to it and willing to accept that the world is not the same as maybe when they ran 10, 15, 20 years ago.
So in building your business, one of the things I know just from knowing you is that culture is really important. And what I'm kind of fascinated is what your sense of, what does culture mean to you? And how do you sustain culture? And then in a business where you create winners, what kind of impact do losses have on team morale and dynamics?
Yeah. So culture is a huge part of our business. I think that anybody who comes into our office and meets our team very quickly gets a sense that we have a strong culture. And for us, it's a culture is what you make decisions around, and it's what your team makes decisions around when you aren't there looking over their shoulder, right? So it's the hiring decisions, the firing decisions, the promotion decisions. It's the what do I do in a new circumstance where I don't have the ability to bring in, the leadership or other people, members of the team, when I have to think on the fly, what does that look like? Culture influences all of those decisions. And it's an old, tired Drucker quote at this point, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. I absolutely believe that's true. And, in our office, we have the ping pong table and we've got the kegerator and, we've got all those cool things, open office floor plan. It's a lot of fun. Those things are not culture, and they're not replacements for culture. They I think are often used as icons of culture, but incorrectly. And so, for us, we really talk about being all in for the candidates and campaigns that we work with. For our clients, we are in the trenches day in and day out, minute to minute in some cases. They're fighting with them, and that permeates everything that we do. And then, as you pointed out, our slogan, if you could call it that, is winners are made. And so every day we start our morning meeting at 8:30 a.m. with tell me about your wins, and we go around the table and every single person has an opportunity to share the wins from the past day. They could be client wins, they could be personal wins, but we make winning a part of our everyday. And to win, you're constantly trying to improve yourself. You're constantly trying new things. You're constantly trying to build something toward an outcome. And you see young people in our organization grow so much, so quickly in an environment where winning becomes part of everything that you do. And then obviously you have to deal sometimes with losses. We might not get that contract. We might have a candidate who, doesn't make it to the finish line, doesn't win their election. And those are tough, but I think it's really easy to say, very easy to determine in an environment like ours, did we do everything in our power? Did we do everything we possibly could? Were we all in for this particular candidate? And if the answer is yes, then I think it's, it helps you get over that. It always stings. It always hurts. It's always the worst, right? But I think if every single day you're committed to trying to deliver that win for the people you work with and the people around you, you're on the path to success.
Now, the other part of that should create a bit of a difference for you than most is that it's a highly cyclical business too. So,
that's right.
Whether you have a win or a loss, now all of a sudden it's over.
Yep.
And then what?
Yeah, exactly.
For some period of time.
That's right. So, every November, all of the elections take place. You win, you lose, but it's over one way or the other. That's exactly right. And so on the one hand, I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth here. We have this incredible time from about the second week of November to the end of the year where we have very low demands. We get to, during Thanksgiving and Christmas time, spend so much time with our families and really be able to, disconnect and disengage. And so, you go from having these 16, 18, 20-hour days in some cases as you're getting to the finish line to being able to, have this big, nice release where it's not quite vacation, but it's nice to be disconnected a little bit more.
So how does that impact cash flow, and then how do you maintain that, or do you have to let people go, and then what does that do to morale?
It hurts cash flow.
I think I knew that.
Just set up.
So, we make the decision every time that we hire somebody full-time on the team. Are we in a place with the client load that we have, with the growth opportunities, with the long-term clients we have, the ones that don't go away, when an election is over, do we have the ability to sustain this hire through that time? Because to be able to be, we're niche, right? So like in a business, you're supposed to choose a niche, but we've chosen our niche, which is digital marketing and advertising, and then we've chosen a deeper niche that we're doing it in the political and public affairs space. And so... And
one more, right? You guys choose conservative candidates.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then furthermore, one side of the aisle, exactly. So niche. Okay. But it means that we've got to go and train a team over the course of an election cycle and invest so much in them that it would be crazy for us to have to contract like that at the end of the election cycle. We have competitors who do that. It's a big competitive advantage for us that we have the same people, the same training, the long-term relationship, because the consultants don't go away either. We all sort of live in this same pool, this ecosystem where the consultants also need to go out and find their business, in the new year as well. And they like that they can call us up and get the same people on the phone that they have a good working relationship with, and it happens quite often.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned in the first half of the show. You said something about Obama's social media success in the 2008 election. Is it fair to say that social media in 2008 was similar to TV in 1960 when Kennedy beat Nixon?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a fair comparison. I think that's a great point. I mean, it's totally in that race digital, the way they integrated data, their communication strategy online, the way that they were willing to spend money on it for the first time on large scale, and that was a new thing, that combined to create a totally new way of campaigning that in many ways, though it doesn't look similar, set the scene for President Trump to ultimately be successful in his campaign, where the expectation, again, back to that authenticity, you never doubt the authenticity of a Trump tweet, right? Whether you agree with it, you disagree with it, whether it makes you thrilled or irritated, you never doubt the authenticity. You're hearing straight from the guy, and he's a brilliant communicator. Again, you may not agree or, whatever with what he's communicating, but there's no doubt that he has sort of taken that and expanded it to this whole new level of communications strategy where he's talking directly to people without the media filter bubble, without the traditional TV ads. I mean, so much was written in the 2016 cycle about how little Trump was spending on TV or how little he was spending. And, Trump's a unique candidate. I don't know that we're going to see other campaigns run exactly like his in the future. But, what we did learn was that communication directly to voters is critically important. And Obama set that in the 2008 race, really set the tone for it. It's interesting. I mean, just looking at the business side of all of this, Facebook and Google have now surpassed ABC, Disney, which is ABC and ESPN, Comcast, CBS, all these traditional media channels. And so the way that we talk about it is that, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you talk about it in terms of ABC, CBS, and NBC. The new networks you need to be talking in terms are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. These are the new networks that you need to be getting your message out.
So how do you apply this to your own business where you've got all these social media outlets, and then you also have email, and then you also have, there's so many different ways to communicate.
You have to feed the beast.
How do you streamline this to not make yourself go insane?
So we've built custom software. And so this is back where I, put the software hat on. We've built custom software in the office that allows us to deliver on the two big promises to the campaigns, that we're delivering content fast and high quality content, okay? And the way that we do it, and it has to be creative, right? So there's this whole other element here where not only does it have to be really fast and really good, but it's got to be really creative as well. It's got to make people feel something. And so what we've done is we've documented every aspect of our process from A to Z. We've built software around that. So we took the process, we said, okay, here's how we've streamlined it. Now let's build software that makes it possible for you to sort of spin up these recipes. And you're going to, to do any aspect of what we're trying to accomplish, we've got this recipe, and you follow these steps. And it allows us to achieve that consistency, and it allows us to be much faster because it's custom built to our process, but it also gives our incredibly creative people the opportunity to not think about checking the next checkbox on the process, but rather think about, all right, how do we really apply some creativity to this situation? Use the limited time that we do have to come up with a really creative idea.
So get the focus on the art, not the craft.
Exactly. Amen. Better said.
Well, Ryan, really appreciate you coming in today.
My pleasure.
Ryan Cassin, beastdigital.com.
If you want to know more about him, go there. If you want to know more about the show, go to nextlevelshow.com. And also check us out on our podcast. You can search us at The Next Level Show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out the archives. We had Gary Jackson. He's the founder of Cornwell Jackson Regional Accounting Firm. He seems to have an affinity for some guy named Miyagi. I don't really quite get it, but go check it out.
Have a great week.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.